Hello everyone, and welcome for the 7th time to Let's Play Stretch Panic, Freak Out, and Hippa. Every time we've entered the Museum of Agony, we've done so by being ejected from this same portrait up here. And now that we've released all but one of Linda's sisters from their contracts, we can finally see what lies beyond. Let's go. So now, as we approach the end of the game, I hope that we can agree on at least one thing. Freak Out is the worst of the titles for this game. Linda herself never freaks out, she's really calm despite the circumstances, so I have to assume that the title refers to these transformations. Each of the sisters enters the portal, and when they emerge, they've taken on a sort of freakish form. But is that really the most notable aspect of this game that you want to sell it on? Both of the other titles refer to the stretching element, which I think is a lot more memorable. Well, that's not to say that the sisters' transformed states aren't memorable. In fact, they're a large part of what makes this game great, but are they really the selling point? Not so sure about that, and I don't know, Freak Out's just a really vague title that doesn't tell you a whole lot about the game. Alright, so we are battling Spirit, and I just had a stroke of great fortune because she's the hardest of the sisters to Scarf Bomb. She has a very high probability of shaking free of that if you're able to even grab onto her at all. As you can see, she's entirely intangible, sort of like Cyan, who we've met previously, except for her hands, which are always physical, and as I lock onto her, you can see both of them are indicated as weak points. Also, aside from the fact that we can only attack her hands, the notable element here is that there are a lot of obstacles in this room. And can I point out that this room is just wonderful? This is one of my favorite environments in which you fight one of Linda's sisters. You probably can't really tell from this angle, but it's sort of like an elegant ballroom, which I really like, and it certainly matches her attire. So we have these two spiky things, stalactites? I don't know, these like spiky rocks that rotate around her in a circle, and in addition, she summons these Zakos. She pulls these statues up from the ground, and as you can see that one did there, they do eventually sink back under the ground. But each of the Zako that she summons has a different attack, and they're all based on sisters we've fought previously. You saw the one shooting missiles as sort of an analog for Miss Mecha. There's one that shoots fire as an analog to Cinder. This is just another one of the Miss Mecha style missile ones. And then there's one that shoots lasers, similar to the eyes of Face Off, and so on. They're all attacks we've seen before, but if she gets a bunch of them on the battlefield at the same time, it can be very difficult to dodge them all. So it's a good idea to go ahead and pluck them once they've appeared. It only takes one hit to eliminate each of them. Or you can wait and they'll disappear gradually. But as time goes by, she'll be summoning more and more of them, so it's good to keep them under control. And really you just want to avoid taking damage as much as possible. Avoid the two spike rocks, avoid the attacks of the Zako, and just get in damage on her hands whenever it's convenient. But you really want to focus largely on defense in this fight. Ow, I should not have run into that. Because she is by far the hardest of the bosses in this game. She has a lot of ways of dealing damage to you, and it definitely adds up, as it's doing right now. As you can see, I'm not in a very advantageous position at all. This one may take a couple of tries before I get it. It's one that's definitely best fought using the Scarf Bomb. If you come in here with a lot of points, you can just grab onto her hand and Scarf Bomb away. It's still a little bit difficult since, as I said, she can be hard to grab onto. But it'll make things a lot easier than trying to do it the fair way, as I am now. And it didn't work out, so let's go try again. I still have 39 points, now 33 after entering that 6-point door. So I think I should be fine to try it again without reloading to get all of my points back. We can actually skip this little cutscene here. It's one of the things I like quite a lot about this game, is that since you do have to refight the bosses so often, it's nice to be able to skip their little introduction sequence. You can also skip the very first cutscene at the start of the game as well, if you're playing this game on a subsequent time. You just want to get straight to the action. It's a really nice feature to have. Alright, so once again, I was fortunately able to start things out with a Scarf Bomb, so let's try to deal more damage to her hands than we did last time. I was mainly focused on explaining things last time around, but this time I can get right down to business and just try to get some attacks in on these hands. And so far it's going pretty well. I think I've already dealt as much damage as I did the entire last time. She hasn't been summoning too many of those Zako, but her hands can be very difficult to grab. As you can see, they move around in pretty unpredictable patterns. Fortunately, her arms glow so as brightly as they do. It makes it sort of easy to track the movements of her hands, which would be really hard to see otherwise. The way that her arms are like sort of outlined in sort of a cell shady fashion. Makes me wonder if originally they weren't animated that way. Ah, she grabbed me. As she does that, there's nothing I can do in response. That's just one of the many ways she has of dealing damage to me. Ah, and she hit me again. Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder if her arms weren't originally animated this way, and it was decided that the battle was too difficult. It was too difficult to track the movements of her hands when they moved off screen. So they were sort of outlined and made brightly colored in this way to make them easier to track. If that's the case, I'm really thankful for it. Ah, I got grabbed again. Not going my way. Okay. I've dealt less than half of the damage I need to defeat her, and she's dealt enough to defeat me. It's over already. Yep, that's it. Alright, well, I got a point somehow. That's nice at least. So I'm sure it's evident by now that Spirit's considerably harder than the rest of her sisters, and I'm glad for it. Like I've said before, this is generally a pretty easy game, so it's nice to have this difficulty pick up here at the end. And I like the style of this. It's one of those final battles that sort of requires you to learn, or rather to use everything you've learned up until this point. It sort of subtly reminds you of situations you've been in the past, the way she well, the way she summons Zako that have attacks that we've seen before, but also the way that her insubstantiality is reminiscent of Cyan, for example. It's just sort of got elements from a number of the earlier battles, but unlike Jelly-chan, it's also got an identity all of its own, and it makes Spirit one of my favorite fights in this game. I really have got to do a better job of avoiding those spike rocks. The spike rocks, it's interesting to note, are rotating, but the Zako she summons are stationary. So if you try to stay still to avoid the Zako, you'll still be disrupted by the rotating rocks, and if you try to sidestep to avoid the rotating rocks, you're bound to walk into the Zako. So her two main avenues of attack are sort of at odds with one another. To keep you on your toes, you have to remain aware of your surroundings. As I did there, I was walking right and had to change my direction to avoid running into that rock. Let's see, I saw a Zako in the foreground. I should probably take care of that one there. See, one of the ones we haven't seen yet is the spinner style Zako that shoots those electrified yellow orbs. And that's one of the more troublesome ones, but I think we've seen the others at this point. Okay, so things are going really well at this point. I've taken a lot of damage, but so has Spirit. I have exercised the Demon of Vanity. You can see that flying around. And if everything keeps up, it looks like I'm finally going to get it. But I may be speaking too soon. She can definitely... there's not a lot I can do if she tries to grab me. I've had problems with that in the past, as you've seen. But barring that, I think we're in good shape here. Let's see. Alright, 40% more damage. Maybe I'll go for a torpedo attack here. That'll deal more damage. Yeah, I thought that might happen. Similar to the fight against Android, sometimes the torpedo attacks are not good here because they can sort of just fling you around without actually moving you into the actual boss. Okay, there I saw a yellow orb bouncing around, so there is definitely a spinner-style Zako in effect. Uh-oh, let's get rid of this guy. Oh, he got the torpedo off. I wanted to destroy him before he actually got that off. Unfortunately, unlike when we fought Miss Mecha, the torpedoes do not seek Spirit once you redirect them. They just sort of fly back to their source and run into the ground. So we can't use them as a means of offense. Redirecting them is only a defensive measure. It only protects Linda. And there's another torpedo coming at me I have to take care of now. There's a face-off style laser one shooting at me that I need to avoid. Okay, things are going well, but it's going to be really close. I've taken a lot of damage, and so has she. I just need to get a couple of more hits in and avoid taking any more damage. This one's really tight. This is going to be close. Okay. I'm avoiding everything I can, avoiding these torpedoes. Let's just grab that hand, get that damage in. Was that enough? No. Okay, I'm getting really close, though. 2 torpedoes coming away. Was that it? Yeah, that was it. Okay, that was the final blow. Oh... I didn't think I was going to get it on the 3rd try. It was close though, but whew, I'm glad I did. And so with that, I've rescued every one of Linda's sisters, once again a barrier of light, preventing that Demon of Vanity from getting to her. And once again, we are victorious. So with that, let's return to the Museum of Agony, and for the final time, the Gallery of Shame. As you can see, the Museum of Agony has changed a little bit. The music has changed from something spooky to something triumphant, and all of the doors are gone except for the one to Spirit's Realm, which has been replaced by the very first door we saw, the one that led us here to Limbo, which will now lead us to freedom. But we're not quite ready to do that. We have a bell to ring and a final sister to learn a little bit more about. So let's do that. A feature of the Gallery of Shame that I haven't shown off yet is that you can actually stretch while you're here. This circle thing that surrounds them, you can use this to grab and stretch various parts of each of your sisters. The manual refers to this as punishing them, but there's really no point to doing this, and unfortunately the stretch effects aren't really all that pronounced, so you can't do any really silly things with it. Anyway, we have one final sister here. We have Spirit. So, let's read a little bit more about her. The eldest member of the family, Spirit has become Linda's ultimate adversary. Spirit's dream was to become a ghost, a formless apparition with the ability to influence the world of the living. She does so through the use of 2 phantom claws, the only part of her body that are real per se. Spirit's desire for children also manifests itself in her demon form, creating deadly Zako statues to assist her. I kind of like that, how like as the oldest of a very large family of sisters, she's sort of taken on a maternal role, and that explains why she summons those statues, which have abilities reminiscent of those of her younger sisters. They're like her children. It's kind of an interesting concept. Anyway, there's nothing left to do now but the credits. It's kind of funny how Linda always enters the museum this same way, being ejected from that same portrait, even when you're just coming from the Museum of Agony, which is just inside this bell here. Anyway, it's kind of interesting to note that you can actually save right now, even though there's nowhere to go from here but the credits. You can actually save your game at this point if you want a file that has all of the sisters unlocked here in the Gallery of Shame. But anyway, since we've already seen that, let's try to make our way up these stairs and go check out the credits, because that's all there is to do now. And there you have it. This has been Treasure's Stretch Panic. A bit of a controversial game, and I can't claim that I don't understand why. There's definitely a lot to criticize here. If you try to evaluate games from a largely technical perspective, you can particularly find a lot of things to pick apart here. The camera has a lot of issues, the controls are not great. Though, to be fair, I think the controls are actually just fine for the actual boss fights. Since the usual scenario for playing this game is being like locked onto a target and then sidestepping either left or right around them, everything plays just fine as long as you're in that sort of paradigm. Also, Linda's sidestepping animation is really cute, so I'm glad you get to see it as much as you do throughout the game. But the further you get from that paradigm, the worse the game feels. Like navigating around the hub world, it's not really a big deal because there's not a lot of movement involved there, though you can like trip over the stairs and it's a little bit awkward. But like the EX worlds are just kind of awful. It makes me really glad that there aren't more like prolonged platforming segments in this game. That's definitely an approach that they could have taken with this game if they wanted to sort of like buffer it up to length, and I'm really glad they didn't do that, because if this game was any longer, if there was any more padding, people would just say it's a pretty crappy game, but it's got these great memorable boss fights. So I'm glad that they kind of left it the way they did and let those be the focus of the game. And it's just kind of unfortunate that we have the EX worlds at all. At least they are pretty much optional. You can only go to one of them if that's all you want to do. It's sort of their way of apologizing, I guess, that you don't have to clear those to beat the game. Also, I think a lot of people would probably find the Bonita Zako to be in fairly poor taste. They're sort of cartoonishly exaggerated breasts. I think like parodying cosmetic surgery would have already been pretty passé in 2001, and I don't think anyone really needed this game to ridicule it any further. But in spite of all of its flaws, I'm a big fan of this game, and I really hope you enjoyed watching it too. My name is Dylan, I've been your host, thanks a lot for watching, and I hope you'll join me again when I play some other games.